Well, let's hear now from Senator Joe Lieberman, former US Senator and Democratic vice presidential candidate. He joins us from New York. Thank you very much indeed for being with us, Senator Lieberman. How likely do you think it is that we are going to have a President Trump?
Well, it's possible. I mean, I think, first of the latest public opinion polls here in the U.S. Show this right now to be a very close race. Surprisingly close, I think, for a lot of people between Mr. Trump and Secretary Clinton. This is a very unpredictable year. No one would have predicted that Trump would be where he is today, so I think all of us are a bit modest in predicting how this is going to end. So a Trump presidency is possible. I wouldn't say today it's probable, but it's definitely possible.
And as an independent, is that a prospect which worries you?
Well, I think in the first place, we've all got to understand why Donald Trump is doing as well as he is. And I think it's because the American people across party lines are fed up with status quo politics. Too much partisanship, too much ideological rigidity, not enough getting done in Washington to help the people live better lives. And so Donald Trump comes along, and Bernie Sanders in a different way, both highly unconventional, but both the surprise candidates of the year. So I'm watching as an independent, like a lot of independents. I'm not really sure who I'm going to vote for at this point, and I think the next 5 months plus will tell me who provides better hope for the future of our country.
In one area where you have quite a lot of common ground with Donald Trump is Iran and Barack Obama's opening to Iran, isn't it? You think that is
right.
A mistake?
I do. I'm privileged to be the chair of a group called United Against Nuclear Iran, founded about 8 years ago by diplomats like Richard Holbrooke and Dennis Ross, Jim Woolsey, focused now, after the Iran nuclear agreement was signed, on making sure that businesses throughout the world understand that it's not time for a gold rush to Iran. In fact, the Iranian government, parts of it like the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, are still under sanctions, certainly from the United States, some from Europe, and some from the United Nations. So that doing business in Iran, we're telling people, remains neither smart nor legal, really. And so far we've been really impressed by the banking community in Europe and its own reluctance to finance investments by European and other countries in Tehran because the risks are still too high.
Doesn't it make sense to encourage Iran as a balance, if you like, to Sunni Islam to a certain extent, and also as one of the countries which we know from history in the region has one of the most best educated and sophisticated populations?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it does have such a sophisticated and well-educated population is part of the tragedy of this moment in Iranian history, because they've been held hostage by this Islamic, theocratic, radical, violent, hegemonic regime. And of course, I'd love to see it all change. I'd like to think that the nuclear agreement might have an effect on that, but I have almost zero hope. And the nuclear agreement was very transactional, limited to the nuclear sector. It wasn't at all transformational. Iran has continued to support terrorism, to repress the human rights of its people, to support radical movements throughout the Middle East and indeed throughout the world. And therefore, it's why I have so little hope that this nuclear agreement ultimately will work. I think ultimately Iran, under it, will become a nuclear power, and the world will be much more dangerous as a result. I think for business to feel confident in going in and investing in Iran, the Iranian government has to change and prove that in response to this nuclear agreement, it's going to stop being a supporter terrorism. It's going to stop repressing the rights of women and gays and lesbians and journalists and all the rest. But it hasn't. In fact, it's continued to get worse and worse. They don't deserve our trust yet. I hope they'll do something to earn it, but I'm very skeptical that they will.
Finally, on this issue of international affairs and particularly the Middle East, Hillary Clinton's made it clear, she's actually speaking now in Kentucky, but she's made it clear that she would take a somewhat tougher line than President Obama. Do you think she would be better, or would Donald Trump be better dealing with the global situation as it now is?
Well, I mean, you'd have to say, based on her vast experience as the First Lady, as a U.S. Senator, and as Secretary of State, that she would bring to the presidency a lot more experience, a lot more contacts around the world. And she has, much to my encouragement, made clear that she would take a tougher position than the Obama administration on some of these issues, including relations with Iran. She seems to have taken that tougher position inside the Obama administration when she was Secretary of State. Mr. Trump is less experienced and less well known. I mean, he said some things, including the dust up with Prime Minister Cameron, that are so unconventional that I know it worries a lot of our allies around the world and worries a lot of people here at home. I guess the question is, if he's elected, would he really follow through in that way, or would those either come to be seen as things he said in a campaign, or you might say opening positions in negotiations with both our allies and particularly with our enemies?
Senator Lieberman, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be with you. Be well.